Welcome everybody. We're going to introduce today a new initiative which we're calling the LSMS for Nutrition Learning Hub. So I'll be presenting together with Alberto Zeza from the LSMS team, Ana Moltedo from the FEO Statistics Division, and Gareth Osman from Luana, Lilongwe University of Agriculture and Natural Resources. So my name is Edward Joy. I'm an assistant professor in the nutrition group at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. So I work on a project called MAPS. You can see in the bottom corner the logo there, the Micronutrient Action Policy Support Project. And we make extensive use of LSMS data in this project. So that's where my interest comes from. Just as we go along, as Elena said, please do feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat box. And also if you could pop any questions in the chat box as well, and we'll try and get to those as we go along. So a quick look at what we've got ahead. We've got 1 hour here today, so we'll go through things quite quickly. We'll start with an introduction to the Living Standards Measurement Study, LSMS, from Alberto. And then I will introduce to you the Learning Hub. And then we'll have 2 short presentations, thanks to Anna and to Gareth. And here we will just see showcasing some recent and exciting work using household consumption and expenditure survey data and LSMS survey data for nutrition research applications. And then finally, we will have an interactive component at the end where we're going to ask you for some inputs, which will help us shape the future of the Learning Hub. So that's the outline for today. That's what we've got coming up. And at this point, I'll hand over to Alberto for the introduction to LSMS. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edward. Thank you, everyone, for joining. My name is Alberto Zeza. I'm a program manager with the Living Standard Measurement Study team based in Rome at the World Bank. So in this presentation, I'll just give you a quick overview of the LSMS. I don't know if by joining this session you are already familiar and an avid user of the data, in which case there might be not be much that is new for you in the presentation, but still it's great to see you engage, because the idea of this learning app is also to move things forward together as a community of users and producers of LSMS data. So the LSMS next is the flagship household survey program of the World Bank. It was established in the 1980s. When the then President McNamara realized that while he was trying to focus the organization on poverty reduction, there were very little data on poverty to be used to analyze and monitor progress with poverty reduction. So the focus was on poverty, and then measured mostly through consumption expenditure, but also on another range of dimensions of living conditions, so education, health, income, jobs, and many more. But there are some key features of the LSMS that have stayed, let's say, since those early days. The first one is that it's a multi-topic survey, so it combines different domains, which means it focuses more on the understanding of socioeconomic phenomena and how development outcomes come about, rather than just monitoring indicators. It's nationally represented, and it's integrated into national statistical systems. So it's not a World Bank survey, but it's done with national statistical authorities in each country. It's georeference. This is kind of an addition of the last 10-15 years, which allows integration with other data sources. In a lot of cases, it contains individual level information, although this is a domain which is by no means complete, and it's one of the areas we would like to expand on. In the last 10 years or so, also, it's increasingly the case that we see longitudinal design of the LSMS, which allow us also to better understand and track and explain change. There is an explicit focus on data quality via a lot of things like fieldwork control and training, and emphasis on protocols, but also through the increased use of technology as part of the household survey process. And It's public access in its early days to maximize research and policy impact, but also then it combines all these efforts to use data with emphasis also on the methodological aspects and keep pushing the methodological frontier while also promoting international standards and harmonization of household survey design. So since the early days of the LSMS, there were always components that had to do with health, with nutrition. Of course, one is consumption, which has always been a key component. Initially, more explicitly for poverty measures, so an emphasis on expenditure, but then also since the start and increasingly also on quantity, and therefore for food consumption, also an emphasis on possible uses for nutrition analysis. Anthropometry has always been there, but then also increasingly we've been adding different types of food frequency or dietary diversity questionnaire, different types of modules on food security, on WASH, and very importantly, the rich set of socioeconomic covariates that explain phenomena. And as I was saying, also longitudinal dimensions that help look into causality next. But then going forward, we also would like, and that's one of the objectives here, is to see how we can further expand what is in the LSMS and might be useful for a community of nutritionists. So, for instance, increased availability of individual level consumption data, new dietary diversity modules like the DQQ and others. So it will be important to also gather your views on what the priorities might be from a nutrition standpoint. So to open a parenthesis on two recent programs within the LSMS program, which are relevant for this discussion. The first one is the LSMS ISA, Integrated Survey on Agriculture. And those of you who have become familiar with the program in the last 10, 15 years might actually identify the LSMS with this program, which has really changed the face of household surveys in Africa and had an explicit focus on agriculture. So this program has been so successful that in many ways, many, let's say, more recent users actually identify LSMS with it and think of LSMS as an agricultural survey program focused on Africa, which is not. LSMS is a much wider program. So another, let's say, program within the program that is relevant for our discussion today is the LSMS Plus, in which we have started pioneering measures to differentiate between men and women in ownership and rights to access to physical and financial assets, work and employment, time use. And this is also the program which we have started thinking more seriously about, also disaggregating consumption data. One also, as I was saying, we've also been working on producing guidance, producing harmonization, and guidelines for household survey designs. And one particular important piece of work for this discussion is these guidelines on food data collection that we have published in 2017 that were approved by the UN Statistical Commission, and which were important because of the involvement of nutritionists in developing these guidelines. So we realized that LSMS, ACS type data are no substitute for nutrition surveys. But the point is that if we can design them with nutritionists to be more useful for nutrition analysis, then they can provide some value added in this space as well. So what we did again was to publish with the large community of collaborators and partners, FAO first of all, these guidelines. And as it is our trademark in a way, the guidelines were drawing on at the source on a big program of methodological research that then informed those guidelines. So some of that research is published in this special issue of Food Policy, and then the guidelines are available on our website and on the FAO website. So now this is all nice and pretty, but does this mean that this data is actually used for nutrition? Well, and the fact is that yes, they are. This graph just refers to use of LSMS ISA data. So for 8 countries in Africa over the past since 2009, and we see that of 2,700 publications that we could trace using the data, almost 500 were focusing on nutrition and food security. And what is interesting when you look into that number is not only the magnitude, but also the diversity of research questions, publication types, authors that are behind those numbers. So looking forward, then, why are we excited about this learning app? Because we feel it's a way for us to keep innovating and keep the relevance of the program. So for us, as I said from the beginning, innovation has been the key since the onset of the LSMS in the 80s. And that is based also on feedback from users on the design, on quality of data, on the metrics that we use. And our approach is to learn from the experts. So in the case of nutrition, from this community on what might be the right metrics and how, and particularly what are the relevant evolving policy and research questions that we need to focus on to keep the data current, relevant, and of quality. And one last point very quickly is that we try to do all this with an eye to scalability. So we're not interested in measures that might be too complex to be performed at scale by a National Statistical Office. Or if we do, we try and do that on subsamples that then can be used in conjunction with the larger data set. So we really look forward to this initiative as a way for us to increase further the quality, relevance, and of LSMS data, and ultimately of their use. Thank you, everyone, for being engaged. And over to you, Edu.
Thank you so much, Alberto. So now in this next section, we're going to introduce the Learning Hub itself. So this is a new initiative. What we aim to do with this Learning Hub is to support the generation and use of LSMS and wider household consumption and expenditure survey data to inform nutrition-related research programs and policies. So the activities that we envisage conducting in this Learning Hub are to develop survey innovations with survey owners and data users. So just as Alberto was mentioning there about survey innovations, we hope this will be a really useful forum and platform to get some of those innovations kickstarted. We are aiming to develop open access training materials for data processing and analysis. Linked to that, a code sharing repository. And also we'd like to facilitate peer-to-peer knowledge exchange on best practices, on methods, and on survey development. So who is this Learning Hub for? Well, we envisage 2 key groups interacting in this Learning Hub. Firstly, students and researchers with an interest in using household consumption and expenditure survey data and LSMS data for a nutrition-related research topic, and survey owners and technical advisors with an interest in enhancing and promoting the value of nutrition-related data. So we see this as a symbiotic relationship between the data users and the data generators, with both benefiting from participation in the Learning Hub. In terms of timelines, well, we're in what we're calling an inception phase at the moment. So we're just starting up, and here what we are trying to achieve is firstly identifying participant ambitions and needs, and we'll start that activity today in the interactive component. We'll be collating existing materials and pulling those together as the basis for some of our shared learning materials. And we will start creating our participant network. Again, that's just starting today. Mid next year, what we envisage is hopefully moving into a funded phase where we have some more time and staff time to devote to this. And that's where we think we can develop new training materials coordinate peer-to-peer learning activities and sessions, populate the code-sharing repository, and pilot some survey innovations. So those are some of the activities that we see coming later on, all facilitated through this Learning Hub. So now we're going to move to two short presentations, the first from Anna and the second from Gareth. And this is where we're just going to showcase some recent and upcoming uses of household survey and LSMS data for nutrition research. So thank you. Over to you, Anna.
Thank you, Edward. So good morning, good afternoon from Uruguay. I'm Ana Moltedo. I work for the FAO Statistics Division, mainly on processing household consumption and expenditure survey data to produce food and nutrient consumption statistics. So I will start mentioning that the FAO Statistics Division has been using household level data since the 90s for estimating the level of inequality in usual dietary energy consumption that is measured through the coefficient of variation. This CV is one of the parameters needed for estimating the prevalence of undernourishment that is annually published in the SOFI report. So now moving beyond that dietary energy, later this year, FAO will launch a food and diet domain on its corporate statistical database that is commonly known as FAOStat. The main characteristics of the domain are that it makes use of existing data, supply utilization accounts, household consumption and expenditure surveys, and individual level intake surveys, and it makes available harmonized food and nutrient statistics from the different data types hosted in one place. So now focusing on the household consumption and expenditure survey subdomain, the main data sources are the LSMS microdata that is available at the World Bank Microdata Library and microdata from national statistical offices. So this is how the subdomain will look like. It presents average food and nutrient consumption statistics for different population groups like regions, urban areas, provinces, rural areas, states, income groups, and also for different food groups. No, please go back. The list of nutrients includes dietary energy, macronutrients, vitamins such as vitamin A, vitamin C, and minerals like iron, calcium, phosphorus, etc. Now, next, please. Now I will show a couple of examples of the type of analysis that we could perform using the statistics that will be available at the domain. Here we can see the proportion of total vitamin A from vegetables, assuming no vitamin A food fortification in the country. And in 10 out of 11 countries, vegetables are the main source of vitamin A. So this is an example of the level of protein consumption according to the source in terms of animal protein or non-animal protein. And well, here we cannot identify a specific pattern across the different countries. So if we are interested in performing an analysis of nutrient consumption between the different income groups, we can compute the ratio between the nutrient consumption of the richest and the poorest. And this is an example of this ratio for the different nutrients and different countries. So this is the last chart. When the survey design is standardized across the years, and this is very important, we can also perform trend analysis. In this example, the last 2 points correspond to 2018 and 2020, so the period in which we have this pandemic. And it is interesting to know that the nutrient consumption and dietary energy, they decreased during this period. So thank you very much. Gareth, over to you.
Thank you so very much, Anna, and thank you everyone for joining. I'm Gareth Osman from Lilongwe University of Agriculture and Natural Resources, working under MAPS project. So I contribute to the research that integrates these types of data sets and food composition, as well as econometrics to improve food system to deliver healthy diets. So I'll walk you through some of the analysis on top of what Anna has presented related to HCS data. So while the HCS may be less precise than the individual diet surveys by design, their strengths and benefits make them a practical tool for enacting national policies and identify communities where nutritional interventions are highly needed. Among their strengths, HCS are typically conducted every 3 to 5 years, allowing for an examination of trends, and they are statistically representative at national and usually at sub-national levels, and they are comprehensive by containing detailed household food consumption and acquisition information. Last but not least, they include a wide range of data on determinants, enabling various analytical options. So the nutritional power of these types of data sets is generated from the combination of two types of data. One is the food consumption, and the other one is the food composition data from national and regional micronutrient composition databases. And this strong data combination is one of the keys to informing evidence-based food and nutritional policies. So the results of the HCS have wide-ranging uses for assessing food security and nutrition. And here are a few examples of their application. The case of Malawi HCS datasets. So they can be used to identify key food sources for nutrients. For instance, in this chart, based on Malawi's 2019-2026 integrated household survey, cereals provided a higher share of micronutrients that were assessed in this study. Number two, they can also be used to estimate the prevalence of nutrient inadequacy and also provide within country variation under various scenarios. For instance, in this map, shows the district level prevalence of vitamin A inadequacy in Malawi under fortification scenarios using the nutrient density approach based on IHS4, a paper published by Kevin and others. So the A, B, and C panels represents the 3 fortification scenarios, and the progression from A to C shows the predicted contributions as food fortification improves in compliance at the industry level. So in this vitamin A density example, we see high prevalence of inadequacy across the entire nation under the no fortification scenario. And as we account for the contributions of fortification, we see that the map lightens across the country, indicating a decrease in the prevalence of inadequacy as fortification is implemented. Last but not least, just to mention a few, they can also be used to identify seasonality patterns in diets. For instance, in this figure shows the seasonality pattern of selenium in Malawi by food group using the IHS5. So you see that there is a seasonal variation in the apparent intake for selenium in Malawi's diets, with a sharp decrease in the month of January, the green top line. And additionally, due to the cereal food group being the primary staple food in Malawi, there is a noticeable decrease in selenium intake between the months of November and February. So in conclusion, these HCS provide variable insights into the diets of populations, capturing aspects of subnational geographical, socioeconomical, and seasonal variation, just to mention a few, and estimates of the dietary macronutrient supplies derived from HCS food consumption data can be used to explore and inform evidence-based nutrition interventions and policies. Thank you very much. Back to you, Edward.
Thank you so much, Gareth. So we're doing well for time. This is the part where we're going to move now to asking you to contribute and to participate. And we're going to do that in breakout groups in a second. Just before we move to the breakout groups, let me explain this activity to you. So we'd really appreciate your inputs here, and this is your chance to shape what we do in the Learning Hub going forward. So in a minute, there will be a link in the chat box, which it would be great if you could click on that, and that will open up what we call a Google Jamboard, and it will look like this. So on the Jamboard, you will see a question. So you'll see a question. So on the first one, you will see, describe your experiences with household consumption and expenditure survey data, or LSMS survey data. And you will see an example sticky note added to the Jamboard there. What would be great is if you can fill this in individually, but you will be in small breakout rooms, meaning that if you want to discuss the activity with anyone, feel free to unmute. Feel free, obviously, to introduce yourselves to each other in the small breakout rooms. The idea is that you click on the left here to create your own sticky note, and a box will pop up, and you can choose the color of the sticky note. And if you can, select the color of the sticky notes from the options at the top. So whatever best suits as a description of your role. We realize there's only 5 color options on a Google Jamboard. So we've got an other category. So if those categories at the top don't fit and describe your role very well, then feel free to create a transparent sticky note and put the description of your role in brackets. So then if you can just put a brief bit of information about your experiences working with these data, pop it anywhere on the Jamboard, and that's complete. And then you can go up to the top here and toggle across to the second of the Jamboards and do the same activity again. There'll be a different question there, and then you can move on to the third one as well. So there are 3 Jamboards. We have just under 15 minutes to complete this activity. So at 1/2 the hour, we'll come back into the plenary session and we'll close the breakout groups.
All right, welcome back from the breakout rooms, everyone. I think we have everyone back, Ed, so I'll pass it back to you.
I'll say thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for your participation in that breakout activity. That's a really, really helpful start for us with this Learning Hub. I could see loads of sticky notes added onto all the boards, which is just what we were looking for. So thank you. So this is my last slide, and I'm just going to wrap up by telling you a bit about how to stay engaged with this Learning Hub, if it's something that you think is useful for you. So we're just starting out, but very soon we're going to have a web page where we can direct people. And when we've got that web page, we will be tweeting that out via the MAPS project's Twitter account, MND_support, and also via the ANH Academy Twitter account. So keep an eye on those for more information about the Learning Hub. We'll also be posting updates via the LSMS website, via the ANH Academy, and also on the MAPS website as well. So those are the main channels to keep in touch. Also, please feel free to reach out to myself, to any of the members of the MAPS team and the presenters today, and just keep plugged into this. We're really hoping that this has sparked some interest, giving you an idea of what's to come in this space. And we hope that you'll continue participating and join us in this Learning Hub as we move forward. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you especially to the co-presenters today, and thank you to Elena for hosting and all the technical coordination. And I look forward to staying in touch with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ed. Big applause to Ed and all of our presenters today. This was a really great session. So yeah, thank you so much for coming.